I married into a family full of drama, but when my mother-in-law tried to control my life, I decided to play her game. The first time I met Margaret Wilson, she greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and a hug that felt more like an assessment than an embrace. Her perfume, something expensive and floral, lingered on my clothes long after she'd released me, as if marking her territory. I remember thinking it was just nerves. Meeting your boyfriend's mother is always intimidating, especially when that boyfriend is as devoted to his family as Adam was. "So you're the one who's been stealing all my son's time," she said, her voice melodic but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. She was impeccably dressed in a cream cashmere sweater, a single strand of pearls at her neck, and not a silver hair out of place. "I was beginning to think he'd invented you." Adam squeezed my hand. "Mom, this is Eliza, the one I've been telling you about for months." "Of course, dear." She patted his cheek affectionately. "I'm only teasing. Come in, I've made your favorite pot roast with those little potatoes you love." That was 3 years ago. If I'd known then what I know now, I might have turned around and never looked back. But love makes fools of us all, doesn't it? Adam and I had met at a charity gala where I was coordinating PR for my firm. He was there representing his father's company, a family business that had made the Wilsons comfortable if not wealthy. Adam was different from the men I usually met at these events. Genuine, passionate about education reform, and refreshingly immune to the superficial networking games everyone else played. When he talked about his work with underprivileged schools, his eyes lit up with a conviction that drew me in immediately. Our courtship was swift and intense. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. By our 1-year anniversary, he'd proposed on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, the sunset painting the sky in colors I hadn't known existed outside of dreams. I said yes without hesitation. The wedding was small but elegant, a garden ceremony at a historic estate with just our closest friends and family. Margaret insisted on handling most of the arrangements, which I initially appreciated given my demanding job at Harper & Associates. I was up for a major promotion that would make me the youngest project director in the firm's history, and the wedding planning would have been overwhelming. But looking back, that was the beginning of Margaret's campaign. She changed the flowers from my chosen wildflowers to her preferred roses. She updated our guest list to include several of her friends I'd never met. She even had opinions about my dress, suggesting something more traditional than the sleek, modern gown I'd fallen in love with. "Mothers know best, dear," she'd say whenever I tried to reinstate my original choices. And Adam has always loved classic touches. Adam, caught between his mother and his fiancée, tried to mediate but ultimately deferred to Margaret more or than not. "She's just excited, Liz," he'd say, "and she's had a rough year since Dad passed. Let's just let her have this." So I did. I smiled through the ceremony in a dress that felt like someone else's. I thanked Margaret's friends for gifts I didn't want. I compromised because that's what you do for family, right? The real troubles started 2 weeks after our honeymoon in Bali. Adam and I had just moved into our new apartment, a sun-filled 2-bedroom in the city, close enough to both our jobs that we could walk on nice days. We were unpacking the last of our kitchen boxes when Adam's phone rang. His face fell as he listened to the voice on the other end. "Mom? Mom, slow down. What happened?" A pause. "Okay, I'm coming right now. Don't move." He hung up, already reaching for his keys. "Mom fell in the shower. She's dizzy and thinks she might have hit her head. I need to go." "I'll come with you," I said, dropping the plates I'd been arranging. The scene at Margaret's colonial-style home was dramatic. She was propped up on the sofa, a cold compress against her forehead, looking pale and fragile in a silk robe. The moment we walked in, she reached for Adam with trembling hands. "Oh, my boy," she whispered. I was so scared. The room just started spinning, and next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Adam knelt beside her, examining the bump on her head that I couldn't quite see. "Have you called the doctor?" "Not yet. I didn't want to bother anyone until you got here." Her eyes fluttered closed momentarily. "You know how I hate to be a burden." We spent 5 hours in the emergency room, only to be told that Margaret had a mild case of vertigo, likely from an inner ear issue. No concussion, no serious injury. The doctor prescribed rest and some anti-nausea medication. "Better safe than sorry," Margaret said on the drive back to her house. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Adam. She glanced back at me in the rear seat. And Eliza, I'm sorry to have interrupted your unpacking. You must think I'm just a foolish old woman. Not at all, I lied. I'm just glad you're okay. That night, as Adam insisted on staying at his mother's house, just in case, I watched him tuck her into bed like a child, bringing her tea and magazines, and checking on her every half hour. I slept in the guest room alone, staring at the ceiling and wondering why something felt off about the whole situation. It became a pattern. Just as Adam and I would make plans, dinner with my college roommate, a weekend getaway to wine country, even a simple movie night, Margaret would have some kind of episode. Chest pains that disappeared before the ambulance arrived. Dizzy spells that coincidentally struck when we mentioned traveling. Even a dramatic fainting episode at Sunday brunch when Adam mentioned we were considering a job opportunity in Chicago. Her blood pressure drops sometimes, Adam explained after that incident, as we sat in yet another emergency waiting room. It's been happening since Dad died. I nodded, but a kernel of doubt had taken root. I'd noticed how quickly Margaret recovered once plans were canceled. How her episodes never seemed to happen when Adam was out of town for work. How she'd been perfectly fine at her garden club meeting the morning after keeping us up all night with supposed heart palpitations. 3 months into our marriage, Adam was promoted to regional director at his educational consulting firm, a position that would require occasional travel. The night we were celebrating at our favorite restaurant, Margaret called in tears. "I think there's someone in the house," she whispered dramatically. "I heard noises in the basement." We abandoned our half-eaten anniversary dinner and raced to her home, only to find nothing amiss. No signs of attempted entry, no suspicious noises. Just Margaret wrapped in a cashmere throw on her sofa, looking both relieved and somehow triumphant when Adam rushed to her side. "False alarm," she said with a tremulous smile. "But I'm so glad you're here now. I've been feeling so vulnerable since your father passed." That night, as Adam called the restaurant to apologize and pay our abandoned bill, I watched Margaret in the kitchen. When she thought no one was looking, she moved with surprising agility for someone who had claimed to be too weak to check her own basement. She reached for a high shelf without difficulty, despite having complained of shoulder pain that morning. "You know," I said casually, leaning against the doorframe, "we're only a 20-minute drive away. But if you're feeling unsafe here alone, maybe we should look into some help for you." Margaret's expression flickered momentarily, something cold and calculating passing behind her eyes before the vulnerable mask slipped back into place. "Oh, I wouldn't want to be a bother. Besides, no caregiver could replace family." She patted my hand. "You understand that, don't you, dear?" I did understand more than she realized. She didn't want help. She wanted control. She wanted Adam's attention, and she didn't care what she had to fabricate to get it. The final straw came when Adam and I had planned a week-long trip to Sedona. Our delayed honeymoon since the first one had been cut short by another of Margaret's emergencies. The night before our flight, right on cue, Margaret called. This time, she was slurring her words, claiming she'd taken her medication incorrectly and needed help. We rushed over to find her perfectly coherent, making tea in the kitchen. "Oh, I must have been confused earlier," she said innocently. "Senior moment, I suppose. But now that you're here, could you stay? I've been having those awful palpitations again." Adam looked at me apologetically. I knew what was coming before he even opened his mouth. "Maybe we should postpone the trip?" he suggested tentatively. "Just until Mom's feeling better?" Something inside me snapped. She's not just a mother-in-law. I realized in that moment, she's a master manipulator in pearls. And she was never going to stop unless something changed. "Of course," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Family comes first." That night, as Margaret monopolized Adam's attention with vague complaints and reminiscences about his childhood, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I wouldn't cause a scene that would only make me look like the villain in her carefully constructed narrative. Instead, I would watch. I would document. And when the time was right, I would expose the game she'd been playing all along. After all, if Margaret wanted to play games, she should know something about me. I don't like to lose. "Eliza, we need to talk about your job." Adam's voice was gentle but firm as he sat across from me at our kitchen table, steam rising from the untouched coffee between us. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was already dressed for an important client presentation, one that could secure my promotion. What about my job? I asked. Though I already knew, Margaret had been planting seeds for weeks. Mom's doctor says her condition is getting worse. The stress of being alone is triggering her episodes. He reached for my hand. She needs more consistent care, and the nurse only comes 3 times a week. I felt my career slipping through my fingers like sand. Adam, I'm up for project director. Do you understand what that means? Years of work, late nights, proving myself in rooms full of men who assumed I was there to take notes. I know, and I'm proud of you. His eyes were sincere but resolute. But this is family. Mom has no one else. It would only be temporary, until she stabilizes. Every decision I made was somehow about her. Every milestone in my life overshadowed by Margaret's convenient crises. 2 days later, Margaret invited us for dinner. I watched her carefully as she moved around her kitchen with surprising energy for someone supposedly on the brink of collapse. When Adam stepped outside to take a work call, she turned to me. Adam tells me you're considering taking some time off, she said, slicing vegetables with precise movements. That's very selfless of you, dear. I always told Adam he needed someone who understood family values. The manipulative brilliance of it struck me. She'd made it sound like it was my idea, like I was volunteering instead of being coerced. I haven't decided yet, I said carefully. My career is important to me. Margaret's knife paused mid-slice. More important than my son's peace of mind? Than family? Her voice remained sweet, but her eyes hardened. I suppose we all have different priorities. When Adam returned, she was clutching the counter, breathing heavily. Just a little dizzy spell, she assured him, as he rushed to her side. Over his shoulder, her eyes met mine in clear challenge. The next day, I requested a leave of absence from Harper & Associates. My boss, Angela, didn't hide her disappointment. This promotion had your name on it, Eliza, she said. I can't guarantee the position will still be available when you return. I understand, I replied, my voice hollow. Within a week, I had transitioned from rising corporate star to reluctant caregiver. My days now revolved around Margaret's appointments, medications, and increasingly bizarre demands. She needed specific groceries from stores across town. Her pillows required fluffing at exact intervals. The thermostat had to remain at precisely 72 degrees. Adam, meanwhile, was working longer hours to compensate for my lost income. When he came home, exhausted, Margaret would call with some minor emergency that required his immediate attention. I don't understand, I confided to my sister one afternoon, while Margaret napped. Some days she can barely walk to the bathroom. Other days, I catch her rearranging furniture when she thinks I'm not watching. Have you told Adam? My sister asked. I've tried, but every time I question anything, I'm painted as insensitive or suspicious. He's blinded by guilt and obligation. The worst came when my old firm landed a major client, one I had been courting for months. Angela called to tell me that my replacement was being credited for my work. If you want back in, Eliza, now's the time, she warned. Otherwise, this train is leaving the station. That evening, I tried to discuss returning to work with Adam. Like clockwork, his phone rang. Mom? What's wrong? His face tensed. Chest pains? Don't move, we're coming right now. As we rushed to Margaret's house, I felt something inside me wither. The career I'd built, the independence I valued, the future I'd planned, it was all sacrificing at the altar of Margaret's fabricated frailty. We found her on the sofa, hand dramatically pressed to her chest. It's easing now, she whispered when she saw us. Just knowing you're here helps. No ambulance this time. No doctor. Just me, watching another opportunity slip away while Margaret monopolized my husband with tales of her suffering. Later that night, while helping her to bed, I noticed something odd. Her nightstand drawer was slightly open, revealing a corner of what looked like a travel brochure. When she went to the bathroom, I glanced inside. A spa resort in Arizona. Confirmation emails, receipts. My hands trembled as I quickly closed the drawer, mind racing. Why would someone supposedly too ill to be alone be planning a spa getaway? The next morning, I watched from the kitchen as Margaret, who had claimed she couldn't lift her arms above her shoulders due to pain, reached up to adjust a painting, movements fluid and painless. When she noticed me observing, she immediately hunched and clutched her shoulder, wincing dramatically. That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty. Margaret was lying about everything. And those lies had cost me everything I'd worked for. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The spa brochure haunted me. For days after finding it, I watched Margaret more carefully, documenting the discrepancies between her claimed ailments and her actual capabilities. When she thought no one was looking, her movements were fluid and confident. The moment Adam or I entered the room, she'd transform, shoulders hunching, hand fluttering to her heart, voice growing breathless and fragile. I began taking notes in my phone. 10:15 a.m., claims unable to reach kettle due to shoulder pain. 10:45 a.m., observed stretching to dust top shelf when she thought I was in the garden. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I needed more, something concrete that Adam couldn't dismiss as coincidence or misunderstanding. My opportunity came 3 weeks later. Margaret had been particularly dramatic that day, complaining of fatigue so severe she could barely lift her head from the pillow. Adam had canceled our dinner plans again to sit by her bedside, reading her favorite poetry until she fell into what appeared to be a troubled sleep. "I'll stay with her," I whispered to Adam. "You have that presentation tomorrow. Go home and get some rest." He hesitated, then kissed my forehead. "You're amazing, you know that. I don't know what Mom and I would do without you." The irony was bitter on my tongue. After Adam left, Margaret's breathing changed almost immediately, shifting from labored to the deep, even rhythm of genuine sleep. I settled into the armchair in the corner of her room, scrolling mindlessly through social media, when a notification sound, not from my phone, broke the silence. Margaret didn't stir. The sound came again, a soft ping from her nightstand drawer. Careful not to make noise, I crossed the room and eased the drawer open. Inside was a second phone, sleeker and newer than the one she normally used. The screen displayed a notification: "Your flight to Milan has been confirmed." One unexpected message changed everything. My heart hammered as I picked up the device. The phone wasn't password protected. Why would it be when no one was supposed to know it existed? I swiped open the screen to find an inbox full of travel confirmations, spa appointments, and messages from something called the Silver Explorers Club. With trembling hands, I took photos of everything with my own phone. Flight details for a trip to Milan, leaving in 3 days. Hotel confirmation at a 5-star resort known for its therapeutic hot springs. A full itinerary of wine tastings and museum tours. All scheduled during the exact week Margaret had tearfully asked Adam to help her through a series of critical medical tests. I replaced the phone exactly as I'd found it and continued my search. The drawer yielded nothing else, but now I knew what to look for. While Margaret slept, I conducted a careful exploration of her bedroom, looking for any hiding places. In her closet, behind a row of sensible cardigans, I found a small lockbox. It took me 10 minutes of trying various combinations. Her birthday, Adam's birthday, her anniversary, before it clicked open to her street address. Inside lay a treasure trove of evidence. Credit card statements showing charges from luxury hotels in Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. Membership cards for exclusive travel clubs. A small notebook filled with what appeared to be health-related bullet points. Not real symptoms, I realized with growing anger, but a catalog of fake ailments complete with timing recommendations. Heart palpitations, best for canceling major events. One entry read, "Dizziness, use when alone, allows for quick recovery." Most damning of all was a small leather appointment book. It contained 2 sets of entries, one in black ink showing doctor's appointments and sick days, another in blue ink showing her actual activities. Spa treatments, lunch dates with someone named Gregory, even a weekend painting retreat in Napa Valley. She'd been leading a double life, enjoying luxury and freedom while systematically destroying mine. I heard a change in Margaret's breathing and quickly returned everything to its place, slipping back to my chair just as she stirred. "Eliza?" she murmured, voice immediately adopting the frail quality I now recognized as completely fabricated. "Is that you, dear? I'm feeling so lightheaded." "I'm here," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, despite the fury coursing through me. "Can I get you anything? Some water, perhaps? And could you plump my pillows? I've been so uncomfortable." I complied, playing the dutiful daughter-in-law while my mind raced with the implications of what I'd discovered. As I adjusted her pillows, Margaret reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone allegedly too weak to hold a teacup earlier that day. "You're such a blessing," she said, eyes wide with practiced sincerity. Adam was right to marry someone so selfless. I smiled, the expression feeling like a crack in my face. Family comes first, right? That night, after Margaret had fallen back asleep, I continued my investigation. Her iPad was in her study, protected by the same password as the lockbox. Within minutes, I had access to years of deception. Emails to travel companions about her freedom from family obligations, messages to her doctor requesting blank medical notes she could fill in herself, even photographs of her parasailing in Greece during a week she'd supposedly been bedridden with exhaustion. By dawn, I had compiled enough evidence to expose Margaret's elaborate charade, but confronting her immediately would be a mistake. She was too skilled at manipulation, too practiced at turning situations to her advantage. No, this required something more strategic. If Margaret wanted to play games, I needed to become a better player than she could ever imagine. The transformation began subtly. I arrived at Margaret's house earlier each morning, always with her favorite pastries and a concerned smile. I listened to her fabricated complaints with newfound patience, even suggesting additional symptoms she might be experiencing. "Have you noticed any tingling in your left arm?" I read that could be significant, I'd say, watching her file away the suggestion for future use. She wanted a show? I gave her one. "Margaret, I've been thinking," I said one afternoon as I fluffed her pillows for the third time that hour. "Maybe we should set up a more comprehensive care schedule for you. I could cancel my remaining social commitments and be here full-time." The flash of panic in her eyes was almost imperceptible, but I caught it. Margaret didn't actually want me around constantly. It would interfere with her secret excursions. "Oh, that's so thoughtful, dear. But unnecessary," she replied. "I wouldn't want to burden you further." "It's no burden," I insisted, wide-eyed with false devotion. "After all, what else do I have to do now that I've left my career behind?" The subtle reminder of what she'd cost me hung in the air between us. For a moment, something like guilt crossed her features before she composed herself. "Perhaps we could try it for a few days and see how it goes," she conceded reluctantly. Over the next week, I became Margaret's shadow. I monitored her medication, sugar pills, I discovered, documented her symptoms, all fabricated, and insisted on accompanying her to doctor appointments, which she frantically rescheduled. I made myself so indispensable that she couldn't sneak away without explanation. Meanwhile, I was building my case. I installed a small, unobtrusive camera in her living room after noticing how often she recovered the moment Adam left. I backed up the evidence from her devices to a secure cloud account. I even befriended her housekeeper, Maria, who had witnessed years of Margaret's deception. "She runs on the treadmill when you and Mr. Adam aren't here," Maria confided after I gained her trust. "She says her heart condition prevents exercise, but I've seen her do 30 minutes at high speed." I recorded our conversation, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. Adam noticed the change in me. "You seem different lately," he observed one night as we prepared for bed. "More? I don't know, energized?" I smiled. "I guess I'm finding purpose in helping your mother." The guilt in his eyes was painful to witness. He pulled me into a tight embrace. "I know this isn't what you planned for your life. Once Mom stabilizes, we'll get you back to your career. I promise." His sincerity nearly broke my resolve. Adam wasn't the villain here. He was another victim of Margaret's manipulation. But he wouldn't believe the truth without irrefutable proof. The perfect opportunity presented itself when Adam mentioned a potential weekend trip for our anniversary. Right on cue, Margaret called the next day with concerning test results that would require family support during the exact weekend we'd planned to be away. "The doctor wants to run more tests," she explained tearfully during our next visit. "They're concerned about my heart rhythm. It could be serious." Adam immediately canceled our reservations, promising we'd celebrate another time. As he comforted his mother, I quietly pulled out my phone and made a call just within Margaret's earshot. "Hi, yes, I'd like to book a couples massage for next Saturday," I said clearly. "It's a surprise anniversary gift." "Yes, the full package with champagne." Margaret's head turned slightly, her attention caught. I continued, "And we'll need late checkout on Sunday. We're making a weekend of it." After ending the call, I noticed Margaret studying her calendar with newfound interest. I'd baited the hook, now I just needed her to bite. That evening, I hired a private investigator, a former colleague's husband who owed me a favor. I need surveillance on this woman next weekend, I explained, showing him Margaret's photo. Specifically, I need to know if she leaves her house, where she goes, and documentation of everything. 3 days later, Margaret announced that her doctor had scheduled critical tests for Saturday morning. I hate to ask, she began, voice quivering, but I'll need someone to drive me. The sedation they use… Of course, Mom, Adam replied immediately. Eliza and I will both be there. I feigned disappointment about our canceled plans while secretly finalizing arrangements with the PI. When Saturday arrived, Adam and I drove to Margaret's house, only to find a note on the door. Had to leave early for pre-test preparations. Doctor sent a service to transport me. We'll call when finished. Don't worry. Adam tried calling her repeatedly, growing increasingly concerned when she didn't answer. Something's wrong, he insisted. Mom always answers her phone. Let's check the hospital, I suggested calmly. Maybe she had to turn her phone off for the tests. As we drove to the hospital, my phone buzzed with updates from the PI. Photos of Margaret, looking remarkably spry, boarding a plane at the international terminal. Destination Milan. No wheelchair, no assistance, no signs of any health issues whatsoever. I didn't share these immediately. Instead, I let Adam discover for himself that his mother wasn't registered at the hospital, hadn't been seen by her doctor in weeks, and according to the receptionist, had canceled all her upcoming appointments. I don't understand, Adam said, confusion and worry etching lines around his eyes. Where could she be? I think, I replied carefully, it's time we had a serious conversation about your mother. When Margaret returned from Milan 3 days later, she arrived with a harrowing tale of emergency medical treatments in Italy. She claimed her doctor had sent her there for an experimental procedure that couldn't wait. The lie flowed from her lips with practiced ease as Adam listened, torn between relief and confusion. Why didn't you tell us? He asked. We were worried sick. It all happened so quickly, she replied, dabbing at non-existent tears, and I didn't want to worry you more than necessary. I stayed silent, watching the performance. Adam still wasn't ready to see the truth, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. That night, as he slept restlessly beside me, I finalized my plans. The next morning, I called Margaret. I want to host a special dinner, I said, infusing my voice with warmth, to celebrate your recovery and bravery through all these health challenges. That's very thoughtful, she responded, surprise evident in her tone. I was thinking we could invite everyone. Your sister Patricia, your brother Thomas, Adam's cousins, even Reverend Collins from your church. They've all been so concerned. There was a pause. Margaret was calculating. I knew declining would seem suspicious, but accepting meant an audience she couldn't fully control. How lovely, she finally said. Though I'm still quite fragile. Of course, it will be intimate and brief. I've already spoken to Adam and he thinks it's a wonderful idea. Another strategic lie. I hadn't told Adam anything yet. But by mentioning him, I'd effectively removed Margaret's ability to manipulate him into opposing the dinner. The next week passed in a flurry of preparations. I invited 20 people, all carefully selected for their importance in Margaret's life. Her siblings who provided financial support, church friends whose esteem she craved, family members whose opinions mattered deeply to her. I reserved a private room at La Maison, Margaret's favorite restaurant. I ordered flower arrangements featuring lilies, her preferred bloom. I even commissioned a custom cake inscribed with celebrating Margaret's courage, every detail designed to make her feel special, appreciated, and most importantly, at ease. On the night of the dinner, Margaret arrived dressed immaculately in a blue silk dress, pearl earrings catching the light as she accepted compliments on her miraculous recovery. Adam escorted her to the seat of honor at the head of the table, while I played the perfect hostess, ensuring everyone's glasses remained full. Midway through the main course, I clinked my glass for attention. I'd like to say a few words about my remarkable mother-in-law, I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. As many of you know, Margaret has been battling serious health issues for some time now. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the room. Margaret smiled graciously, basking in the attention. Her strength through countless medical appointments, emergency room visits, and debilitating symptoms has been nothing short of inspirational, I continued. which is why I've prepared a special tribute. The restaurant staff, following my earlier instructions, dimmed the lights and pulled down a projection screen I'd requested. Margaret's face glowed with anticipation as I picked up a small remote. "This is a celebration of Margaret's journey," I said. "The struggles we've witnessed and the ones we haven't." I pressed play. The first image appeared. Margaret boarding her flight to Milan, timestamp clearly visible, directly contradicting her claim of being rushed to emergency treatment. Then Margaret lounging by a pool in Barcelona during a weekend she'd claimed to be bedridden. Margaret dancing at a rooftop bar in Paris on an evening she told Adam she was too weak to eat. Each photo was accompanied by captions showing the date, location, and Margaret's claimed ailment at the time. Next came video clips. Margaret's tearful phone call to Adam about being unable to climb stairs, followed immediately by footage of her jogging up the steps to a museum. The recording of her doctor confirming she had canceled all appointments and had no scheduled tests. The room fell silent, except for occasional gasps. Margaret's face transformed from confusion to horror to fury as the evidence of her elaborate deception played out before everyone she sought to impress. "There must be some mistake," she finally stammered as the presentation ended. "These photos they're doctored. Eliza has always been jealous of my relationship with Adam." Her sister Patricia spoke first, voice cold with realization. "The dates, Margaret. They match exactly with when you claimed you were hospitalized after your collapse at my house. And this was during the church retreat you said you couldn't attend due to your heart condition." Reverend Collins added quietly, pointing to an image of Margaret at a wine tasting. The carefully constructed facade crumbled as more voices joined in, each person connecting the dots between Margaret's lies and their own experiences. Adam sat frozen, eyes moving between the evidence still displayed on screen and his mother's crumbling composure. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "All this time," he said, "all the worry, the canceled plans, Eliza's career, it was all for nothing?" Margaret reached for his hand. "Adam, darling, you don't understand. After your father died, I was so afraid of being alone, of losing you to my wife," he finished, pulling his hand away. "The woman who gave up everything to care for you while you were jetting off to spas." The tears that streamed down Margaret's face now were real, not from pain or illness, but from the public dismantling of her carefully constructed world of manipulation. As dessert was awkwardly served, family members approached me one by one, expressions ranging from apology to admiration. Margaret sat isolated at the head of the table, her power vanished in a single devastating evening. The drive home from the restaurant was silent. Adam gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white, his eyes focused on the road ahead. With unnatural intensity, I didn't push him to talk. Some realizations needed time to settle. 3 hours after we arrived home, he finally spoke. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I suspected for months, had concrete proof for weeks. I sat beside him on our sofa, close but not touching. "I needed you to see it for yourself. You wouldn't have believed me otherwise." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I wouldn't have." His eyes, when they finally met mine, were rimmed with red. "I gave up our life together for lies. I made you give up your career for..." His voice cracked. "I can't believe I didn't see it. She's your mother, Adam. She knew exactly which buttons to push." The next morning, Margaret called 17 times. We let each call go to voicemail. Her messages evolved from tearful explanations to angry accusations, and finally to desperate pleas for understanding. Adam listened to each one, his expression hardening with every fabricated excuse. "We need to talk to her," he finally said. "Set boundaries. Make it clear things are changing." Margaret opened her door with puffy eyes and a trembling lower lip. Another performance. She draped a shawl around her shoulders despite the warm day, a visual reminder of her supposed frailty. "Oh, my dears," she began, reaching for Adam. "I'm so relieved there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Adam stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Stop, Mom, just stop. We're not here for more lies." Her face crumpled in genuine surprise. She wasn't accustomed to resistance from her son. "We're making changes," I stated calmly, effective immediately. Over the next hour, we outlined our terms. We would no longer be providing daily care. She was clearly capable of independence. The financial support Adam had been providing would be reduced to basic necessities only. Most importantly, we would respond only to emergencies verified by medical professionals. "But where will you be?" Margaret asked, panic edging into her voice as her control visibly slipped away. "Living our lives," Adam replied firmly. "I've contacted a realtor about properties in Chicago. Eliza's former boss has offered her a position in their office there." Margaret's manipulation attempts flared desperately. She claimed the stress was triggering chest pains. She reminded Adam of childhood promises never to leave her alone. She even attempted to faint, a move that once would have sent Adam rushing to her side, but now earned only tired sighs. "She tried to control my life with lies," I told my sister on the phone that evening. "I reclaimed it with truth." The transition wasn't seamless. Margaret made several attempts to regain her influence. An accidental overdose that hospital test revealed was entirely fabricated, a tearful reconciliation attempt at Christmas that devolved into guilt-tripping, even enlisting family members to plead her case. But the spell was broken. Adam had seen behind the curtain and couldn't unsee the truth. Each manipulation attempt only strengthened our resolve to maintain boundaries. 2 months later, I rejoined Harper & Associates at a higher position than I'd left, bringing in a major client in my first week back. The satisfaction of reclaiming my career was sweeter for having nearly lost it. "Angela took a chance on me," I told Adam over celebration dinner. "After I walked away once, she had every reason to doubt my commitment. But she didn't," he said, raising his glass. "Because you're unstoppable when you set your mind to something. Something my mother learned the hard way." We moved to a light-filled condo in Chicago's West Loop, close enough to my office that I could walk on spring mornings. Adam secured a position with an educational nonprofit he'd always admired but never pursued, while tethered to his mother's demands. Our marriage strengthened in ways I hadn't anticipated. The experience had forced conversations about loyalty, boundaries, and priorities that many couples never have. We'd seen each other at our most vulnerable and stood firm together. "Do you regret it?" Adam asked me one evening, 6 months after the revelation dinner. "Staying and fighting instead of just leaving?" I considered this carefully. "No. Leaving would have been easier in some ways, but you were worth fighting for. We were worth fighting for." Margaret still tries her old tricks occasionally. Last month, she sent a cryptic text about worrying test results that she didn't want to burden us with. Adam simply responded with the name and number of a reliable senior transportation service that could take her to appointments. She still attends family gatherings, though her position has shifted dramatically. No longer the matriarch whose needs dictate everyone's schedules, she's just another relation whose drama most have learned to politely ignore. Her power existed only as long as people believed her performances. Some days I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. Then I remember the calculated way she stole months of my life, the career opportunities I nearly lost permanently, the strain she willfully placed on my marriage. I don't hate Margaret. That would give her too much power still. Instead, I found something more valuable than revenge: indifference. Her manipulations can't touch our lives anymore. She still plays her games with others sometimes. But as for me, I no longer play her game. I won it.